Oh, Andrea Tessman.
Oh, Kirk Buckner.
I have a question for you.
What would that be?
On the date of August 26th, 1972, what were you doing?
I was not even a twinkle in my father's eye. How about you?
I was one day old. Many, many, many years away from still losing my virginity. But that's another story for another time.
Or not?
No, we're not. I'm married. Obviously, that sort of worked out well for me. Even married twice.
So what else was happening?
Oh, I'm going to tell you. I will tell you. The Munich Olympics started. If you were going to the movies, chances are it was Deliverance. And every time you go into the woods, you're hearing Burt Reynolds became the superstar because of that. But if you were turning on the radio, you might have heard a song that we decided on last week. And it's a good one. And it's Brandy.
What?
You're a fine girl. You're a fine girl. What a good wife you would be.
Mm-hmm.
An excellent choice, I think, that we both kind of made in our own conjoined way.
I think I supported your decision, yeah.
Yeah. It's weird, because I think it's night and day from what Stars on 45. A song, Stars on 45 just felt like it could only have existed in that 3-month window. Brandy, I think it could have happened in 68 up to maybe 78 or 79.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, there's it definitely fits the era, despite being sort of a one-hit wonder. And then it just existed forever in like half of all movies and TV shows that were made, I think.
Mm-hmm. And still will. I mean, I can't see how other period pieces won't sort of use that in the future. It's definitely going to. It's a song that's right for that era, but it doesn't sort of grate on you and make you want to turn the channel. I just imagine that being a song like back then when a lot of the youngsters were listening to... Youngsters, listen to me, how old I am. Listening to Led Zeppelin and stuff like that, or if you're into the Motown sound. If Brandy comes on, you're not offended. You're not turning the dial.
No, that's very true.
Your mom might have listened to it. Your dad might have listened to it. And I think it's a song that can pass through generations. And it might touch on that a little bit more when we get to Guardians of the Galaxy, where I think a lot of people might have heard it for the first time. That's for our younger listeners. But we've already got feedback. We already got feedback?
Really? We
did, yeah. There was a request for Milli Vanilli as a possible next one.
Oh, I did see that, yes.
Yeah, so, and also from my co-host on the Hall of Fame show, who said, let Andrea decide the next song because Kirk, you're just a hog that way, so.
Well, I won't let that happen. I think we can trade off picking songs.
Well, you're going to be on the clock, but the clock doesn't hit just yet. I was thinking, if we did this show, like in another 20 years, if we're still doing this, like if we get renewed, I don't know how we sort of explain WAP and how it has political ramifications. A song that's an acronym for wet ass pussy. And we can swear on this show. We can do whatever we want. Wet ass pussy is now being debated by conservatives in the United States.
It is. My favorite line of discussion about WAP is all of the discussion about how Ben Shapiro can't satisfy his wife. That's pretty much all I'm really getting out of it.
I'm sure
but
that
it is.
I'm sure that he can. It's just that I don't.
Apparently, according to his doctor wife and his experiences, women's vaginas should not actually be wet.
Well, he didn't quite say that. He just didn't sort of imply that they should be like Niagara Falls. I think was sort of more the connotation that I was getting. It's weird because
I'm sure that's what he intended, but of course that's not what all of his fans, and I say that
right,
fully sarcastically. I mean, you say anything, especially if you're a dislikable public figure, and people are going to twist anything you say to make you look bad. So I'm just pretty amused by the fact that he did make a comment about his wife being dry, and the internet just took it to new levels.
As they would. And if Cardi B doesn't try to get into politics and interview Joe Biden, they don't even pay attention. And it's one of those weird things. I kind of get where the conservatives are coming from. Like Joe Biden, okay, so who's your next big interview with Cardi B? And Cardi B knows nothing about politics, so when they're attacking Cardi B on her political knowledge, they're right to do so. But Cardi's got a voice. I don't care whether she's right or wrong. She's entitled to use it. I'm a free speech guy. Having said that, I don't know that the reaction is necessarily to dissect her song.
I think that there's a lot of I think the discussion around her song would have to be more in terms of women's empowerment. And I mean, it's Cardi B. Like, it's a stripper who can sort of spit a few bars and just uses shock value to her advantage. And while I don't like her and I don't like her music, I have some respect for her for the train wreck that she is. And I think that, all of the pro-WAP arguments are more about why let guys make all the money off of rapping about women's pussies? Why not let women do it?
Yeah, and you're right. And this is also nothing new. There have been other women rappers doing this, just nobody this successful. And as it turns out, this is the first time two women collaborated rapping that went number one. So history is made. Kudos to both of them. And I mean that sincerely. So much so that I would like to channel my inner Ben Shapiro. May I?
Sure.
Okay. A dramatic reading of WAP by The Buck. All right, I brought this up here. All right, I think I'm ready. Okay, I'm going to do verse 2 by Megan Thee Stallion. Are we ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Gobble me, swallow me, drip down the side of me. Yeah. Quick, jump out for you let it get inside of me. Yeah. I tell him where to put it, never tell him where I about to be. Huh? I'll run down on him for I have a N-word running in me. Pow. Pow pow. Talk your shit. Bite your lip. Yeah. Ask for a car while you ride that dick. You really ain't never gonna fuck him for a thing. Yeah. He already made his mind up before he came. Aye-ya. Now get your boots and your coat for this wet-ass pussy. He bought a phone just for pictures of this wet-ass pussy. Click, click, click. Pay my tuition just to kiss me on this wet-ass pussy. Mwah. Mwah, mwah. Now make it rain if you want to see some wet-ass pussy. Yeah, yeah. End scene.
Wow.
Yeah, for those listening, yes, I am Caucasian.
That was my slow clap for your dramatic reading of Wet Ass Pussy.
And you know what? More power to him. I was thinking about this. If I had a daughter, I wouldn't really want her listening to that. But when I was a kid, I remember listening to a lot of 2 Live Crew.
Yeah, and you know what it made me think of was like old school Salt and Pepper. Push it.
Push it really good.
What?
Push it real good.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a few like, I didn't really, I probably knew all the lyrics to that song and never really thought about just how rude it was. Like, I knew it was about sex, but it's a lot more explicit than my 12-year-old brain could actually comprehend.
Yeah, I mean, that's just how music is. Everything sort of pushes a boundary. This is nothing new. More power to them, and whatever makes a number one is just what makes a number one. Kudos on Cardi for marketing herself brilliantly. Does she know a damn thing about politics? No. If I was American, would I be voting the same way she is? Probably. Maybe for a different reason than her, I think. Don't know. I think that's enough politics. I get into way too much politics.
I think that's enough WAP for today anyways. I think that we came here to talk about a good song, and we've been talking about, I'll just say politics and not discuss my opinion on her musical skills.
Yes, you are correct. I just found that fascinating to try to dissect this 20 years from now. So I figured I'd dissect it now.
I think there will be a lot of interesting things to dissect 20 years from now, and, looking at the overall socio-political landscape rather than just the song makes a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot more of that now than there was in 1972 when Brandy, You're a Fine Girl came out.
So I had a first couple of visceral reactions when I was sort of like watching this. It was a song I've known for forever, but I've never really watched them perform. And when I say watch them perform, I mean, that was like back in the day when, I couldn't find any concert footage. It was all sort of like lip syncing, because that's how a lot of that was. Is it just me, or does their lead singer look like Alice Cooper?
A little bit. I could see that. Yeah, that long face, and I can see the comparison.
Yeah, and same era, a bit of a pronounced nose, very thin, long, dark hair.
Yep.
Yeah, so the story of the band Looking Glass, and that was, I couldn't find exactly where they came up with their name, but it has to be another one of the many allusions to Alice in Wonderland.
Could be. Pretty much anything in that vein of naming things is.
It just seems like that's one of the more influential books of any artist of any kind.
Yeah, I think that would be a safe assumption, probably.
Yeah. So they're from New Jersey, and when I was reading all the bios to it, did you read some of the same? You probably read some of the same stuff I did, where it sort of compared them to an early Bruce Springsteen, and I don't see that at all. Yeah, they're both from Jersey, but that's about it.
I don't see that. So the song was really a one-hit wonder, and I think a big part of that is because it really doesn't sound like their other songs. They were
right.
They were a bar band and a rock band primarily. So when you have that rock sound, and then you put out a hit single that doesn't sound anything like the rest of your music, people only want to hear that song, and they really quickly lose interest in you as a band. It's kind of like more recently, the Plain White Tees with the song Hey There, Delilah. That was phenomenal. Everybody loved it. Everybody knows it. But it didn't sound like their sound. So they had this one-off single that did very, very well, and then they just kind of faded. I think they're still making music, but they faded from the limelight because it wasn't what made them famous.
Yeah, and there's a lot like that. I think like my college version of that would have been Queensryche with Silent Lucidity.
Mm-hmm.
Like that song was nothing like everything else they did. So you have a bunch of people who probably would go check them out, and it's like, well, why aren't the rest of these songs like Brandy? And it's another song that sort of became a hit almost by accident. Although they certainly got a big push. When you're signed by Clive Davis, still a legend to this day, you're gonna get a good chance. Signed to Epic, and put out material. I guess you like you probably listen to a lot of their discography, and yeah, it's nothing like Brandy, and it's not bad music, but it's not anything that's going to stick either. I think you hit it right on the head. It's like a bar band that knew what they were, and then they would just try to venture out a little bit. And Brandy was a throwaway.
Part of the beauty of a bar band, though, is you play in a bar, and they actually were a bar band. They worked the bar circuit in their college days and after. And with that, you're playing for a significant chunk of time, and you're trying to entertain people, kind of as background music, but also engaging. And you play a huge variety of music doing that. You play wide, like, sure, you might play rock, but you have a lot of flexibility in terms of genre and style of music. And you're generally playing covers, so your style tends to be all over the map. That doesn't always translate well into commercial success, because with a commercially successful artist, the key is to have a sound. And if you try then, their sound was more rock, but they were very flexible because they did have a huge repertoire of covers that they could play well, and then that leads to confusion because people don't hear your band and think of your band. And it doesn't often translate well to a big-name rock band that plays, an hour and a half set and then is done for the night. And, you hear rock, you hear Chicago, you hear Metallica, you hear, these bands generally have a sound, whatever genre it is. And I think that a big part of their lack of success was they just never really settled on a sound.
I think also, too, they might have felt they were pigeonholed to a sound that they either A, didn't want to replicate, or B, didn't know how to.
That could very well be also.
Because as soon as they made it, they were pretty much done. But we were talking last week about the power of the disc jockey. And sure enough, it was a disc jockey that put them on the map here with this song. Because it was a B-side of, you probably listened to it too, Don't It Make You Feel Good. That was their single. And it's so hard to explain to sort of like the people younger than 30 that singles would come out. And I barely remember this myself. Where they put out a single and there would be a B-side. For everything through an album. And the B was just sort of like the throw-in. And every now and then, the B-side would eclipse the A-side. And that's what happened here. And the story was that it was a pet project of a disc jockey in Washington, D.C., who just fell in love with this and pushed it and pushed it and pushed it. And it worked.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, it's weird that the big-name producer that signed them and liked their sound liked this song but didn't push it. He was pushing their rock song, hence why this ended up as the B-side. But, it's definitely a success story of the power of the DJ.
And, I was thinking, when I was talking actually to, again, my Hall of Fame co-host, Evan Nolan, he was saying, because he knew that we were going to be talking about this song. He was just talking about how much he just loves songs that have a story to it. And it's such a simple story.
I think people in general love the heartbreak tales. You're right, they love a story. And this is very much a 19th century sea ballad, in a modern tone, but it's an old it's an old school ballad in every way. It's easy to listen to, and it just kind of tugs the sad heartstrings a little without being overly depressing.
See, I didn't even feel that it was necessarily a sad song in a way, because I thought it kind of left it open, and I guess we should just sort of go through, the plot of the song. Brandy she's a bartender at a seaside town, 100 ships come every day around. I think I got those words wrong. But I guess all the sailors are hitting on her, but she's got her eye on one guy. But what did he love more than her? The sea. It's sort of like Sam Malone in the bar at the end when Norm Peterson says, "Come on, Sam, you know what? There's one thing that really matters to you the most." It turns out it's the bar. He loves the bar the most. Same with this guy. Now, I think Brandy would be a good wife because she probably became a good wife. I honestly believe that. And that might be that, you mentioned a twinkle in the eye. That's the twinkle in the eye for Brandy sometimes that her husband just doesn't understand.
So, I mean, the end of the song, let's just jump to the end for a moment.
Okay.
The end of the song in the original recording fades out with a repeat of the chorus.
Mm-hmm.
I usually find that to be lazy songwriting.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just set a definitive end. In this case, I think it really plays to that open-ended, perhaps something better, perhaps it isn't a sad ending. Like, we're just going to fade out and let you end the story however you want in your head. So I can see where you're coming from, that it's, I personally read it more along the lines of he's a charming sailor that has, at one point he talks about gifts from Spain, and she kind of fell in love with the idea of this seafaring man that loves her and brings her gifts, but at the same time, the pessimist in me probably also thinks he had girls like this in many other ports as well. And
that's strange because men usually don't cheat.
And he tried to tell her outright that, you know what, you're a fine girl and you'll make someone a good wife, but it's not going to be me. Yet she just continues to pine for him, and that's the sad part.
Maybe I was listening to WAP too much because I was listening to the female empowerment side.
But it never says whether or not he came back, so maybe he did.
Probably not. Wasn't this the same year, though, that Mac Davis had a hit, Baby, Don't Get Hooked on Me?
It's the age-old tale of the, oh, honey, I'm too good for you. You need to just hang out with me while I'm here and then let me fade away with no guilty conscience because I told you that you're too good for me.
Yeah, it's that's pretty much sort of like the men's way of just trying to sort of like give. Yeah, you're right. Eliminating their guilty conscience by saying, "Well, told you."
Yeah, exactly.
What?
So we've gone over the story. What I love about this song is that it's actually almost perfectly written. And it's a combination of the production of it and the arrangement and the writing that just makes it like an absolutely excellent composition. It's, the tone of the song leads a little bit into that unknown, maybe sad, but not depressing tone of the story. It starts out with this nice little instrumental intro, but then there's no long instrumental interlude anywhere in it, which really ties it to that old-fashioned ballad. And the music is actually brilliant. In the intro, you've got 4 bars of nice little intro, and then it builds with that do-do-do-do-do, and it just kind of, and then it immediately, there's a drum roll, and it drops down and pairs out to almost just bare bones vocals. And
it's so beautiful.
It's so beautiful, and it's so perfectly written for his voice, which makes sense because he wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's unusual to have that kind of a unprotected, dramatic sound. Usually you'd end up with a song like this, and you'd have someone like Barry Manilow crooning the hell out of it, and it would ruin it. Or you'd have them overproduce it with unison double tracks on the voice and too much backup vocals and too much backup horns, and you'd ruin it. And it would just be, it might have still made number one, and it would have been just a poppy hit, but it would not have lasted the way that this song has lasted for decades.
Yeah, and there is something beautiful to it, and that's sort of why we keep seeing it in movies over and over. Did you watched Guardian of the Galaxy 2?
I didn't, but I did read some information, like some stuff about the song usage, and then I kind of wanted to watch Guardians of the Galaxy 2, but I didn't have it on any of my streaming services.
Okay.
So I'm going to watch it now, though.
Yeah, because, well, they use that where Kurt Russell's character, who plays Ego, a million-year-old being, sort of is seducing an Earth woman. And they're singing Brandy, You're a Fine Girl to each other. Because it's a song that a million-year-old person would like, apparently, and just bond over, and it's Kurt Russell, and he's still cool as hell.
He is. But it's interesting because it really ties into the story.
Mm-hmm.
You know, spoiler alert in case anyone hasn't seen it, but essentially at the end, Ego chooses the universe over the woman. So it kind of really, it's more than just suits the movie. It actually complements the plot line.
Well, he was essentially a sailor because he was doing that all around the world.
Precisely. So no, it's really interesting, and there was one of the articles I saw had Lurie talking about it, saying, you know, there's no actual meaning in the song. He just wrote it. But he said, you know, when Guardians of the Galaxy 2 asked if they could use it, and he saw how they wanted to use it, he was like, oh, it actually gives some meaning to this song, like 40 years later, which is kind of a cool thing.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, sort of, we're talking about Lurie, so the lead singer of the band, pretty much, I don't want to say the only one worth talking about in this group, but the only one worth talking about in this group.
He's the only one that has his own Wikipedia page out of them all. So I think that says something.
Yeah. Well, the band broke up shortly after the song went number one, and other members of Looking Glass would still go out and tour. I listened to his solo album because Clive Davis believed in him. When he changed labels, he took Lurie with him. So I listened to some of his solo material, and I didn't find it very good. I felt like he was trying to replicate Brandy, and maybe he didn't quite know how he got there in the first place.
Could be.
Because it just wasn't working. And it wasn't that...
Well,
but yeah, sorry, go ahead.
That could play into the fact that, you know, Looking Glass didn't really know their sound. So Lurie found this sound with Brandy that he thought he could replicate on his own, and it just didn't really work.
But it's not a sad story for him. He stayed in the music industry, working for, was it Sony, I believe? But still, like, working on soundtracks, like producing soundtracks. I don't quite know what that means. I guess he decides what songs make a soundtrack. But he never left the music industry.
Huge art form. And honestly, with producing soundtracks, part of it is yes, putting together commercial music, but part of it is also the background sound to create an emotion in the viewer. It's actually a really cool art form. It's not glamorous unless you get to Oscar level, and even at that, it's not glamorous because nobody watches those parts of the Oscars. That's why they have to intermix the stars with the, you know, sound effect people. But it's a very cool and very interesting art form.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, because he did quite a few films.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let me bring those up.
Yeah, he had a successful career. He just never made it as a rock star beyond having this one number one hit. But he's got to be raking in the fees for
Possibly.
Like,
I mean,
the royalties on that must be probably more than you or I make combined in a year.
I don't make very much, Andrea. This is what I do now for a living.
How about your wife and I make?
Okay, that might be sort of different. I'm a kept man, and damn right, I love it. Works for me. Actually, yeah, okay, so I brought that up. So, like, some of the films that he sort of worked as a music supervisor, and it's all over the place. Like Alien 3, A Night at the Roxbury, Riding in the Cars with Boys, I Spy, Spanglish. Those are 5 very different films.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, again, more power to him. Because I think a lot of times when people look at, myself included, when I'll look at a one-hit wonder, sometimes you almost start to chuckle and laugh. There's nothing to laugh at here. This man has done exceptionally well for himself, stayed doing what he loved doing. And yes, just because we don't see them doesn't mean that they're successful. It's like when a child star in acting becomes a producer or a director, and you think, oh, this guy must have been a bum, and it turns out he's making millions doing something else.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, hats off to Mr. Lurie, and I encourage everyone listening. I sent Andrea something before we went on air. Elliot Lurie's got his own YouTube channel, and about a month ago, he put out an a cappella version of Brandy, and it was incredible. He's 72, and he sounds the exact same.
I gotta say, with that a cappella, part of what I liked about it, I mean, I'm a nerd and I love a cappella, partially for the technical complexity of it. I have to say that the arrangement of it was incredible and really true to the original composition of the song, which, as I said before, I found to be brilliant and almost technically perfect. I spent a fair bit of time seriously geeking out on breaking down the composition of this song, just in terms of, like, well, I spent way too much time breaking down the composition of this song. And I'm not going to bore you with it because I also have lost a lot of the language to properly describe these things after 20 years of not being in music school. But some of what really makes it great is just the perfect balance. You know, there's a horn section, but it's not too much. It's not overwhelming. It comes in at the right times. It's not overused. The background vocals are really tied to the story in terms of they're kind of like the other sailors in the bar repeating his statements. It's just very incredibly balanced. And a lot of the other covers of the song, I don't get that quality to.
Mm-hmm.
Just sort of a cover of a 70s pop song. But that a cappella version really holds true to the original composition of the song, which I really appreciate.
One thing that I sort of was looking at that I only just really thought of that today. Have you ever heard of the genre, in which it's kind of a weird genre of music because they never called it that then, but they're calling it now yacht rock?
I have not heard of this. What would you consider yacht rock?
Well, it's not so much necessarily what let me read this out because they can sort of explain it better than I can. So around 2005, a music critic sort of came up with the idea that from like 75 to the early 80s, a lot of soft rock was, you know, that smooth soul, smooth jazz sound was what was called yacht rock. So essentially something that people would listen to on their sailboats and shit.
Okay.
And so when this critic came up with that, he said like this existed, like began around 75, like the music of Christopher Cross, Steely Dan to a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
That Actually, Family Guy even did a whole episode on this of yacht rock with and where they were talking about Bob Welch, and they had a bunch of like late '70s artists like Seals and Croft and stuff like that. I think Seals and Croft. I could be wrong, but just a specific thing on soft rock that they say, okay, you're going to listen to that when you're. It's almost like AM radio that sort of still makes you move a little bit, but doesn't age as bad. You know, like Rupert Holmes, the Pina Colada song, stuff like that. Now, this was like 3 years before that, so I almost think if yacht rock exists, and I'm not even sure that it does, because I mean, if it's a genre that you came up with, the title 30 years after it started and 20 years after it ended, did it really exist? You know, the tree falls in the forest sort of idea.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's the case, is this not the origin of yacht rock?
I see your point there. I think it could definitely be. I also think it really falls into kind of the sound of Chicago with the horn section.
Mm-hmm. We're talking good Chicago, not early '80s Chicago.
Oh yeah, good Chicago. There's a few bands in that genre. I don't know that I would say that that this would be the beginning of that sound. You know, to tie it into last week, you could even compare this to some of the Beatles. There's one specific Beatles kind of arrangement that was in my head, and but it's got a lot of those like high ahs and the vocalization without words, which is kind of typical of certain parts of that era. I like the yacht rock idea, though. I think that's a really descriptive sort of, you can visualize that. You can visualize a lot of middle-aged,
white people,
stylish middle-aged white people.
Yeah,
or at least they think they're stylish, like not trendy, but expensively put together. Yeah.
I don't know. As I'm getting older, I think I'd rather be the guy who sort of dresses age appropriate than the guy who tries to look 20 years younger.
No, that's kind of what I meant, though.
Okay.
Like I'm talking like the cargo shorts and expensive polo shirt kind of look, not the skinny jeans.
While you're doing this, you're in front of your laptop, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
What should I look up?
Elliot Lurie. He's got his own website, and he's got some of his photos, and he looks exactly like he should, with his cargo shorts, and he's got his hat backwards playing pinball. He was like looking cool, but not looking cool, if that makes any sense. 70-year-old chic, just sort of like, it's like, who are you trying to be? And then you talk to him like, holy shit, you're the guy who did this? Everyone knows that song.
Hicks, that's what I'm looking for. Also spelled P-I-X, not P-I-C-S, which is the current common shortening. Yeah, he's just kind of looking like he might be into yacht rock, to be honest.
Yeah.
Khaki shorts, a button-up shirt that's rolled up at the sleeves that open 2 or 3 buttons, loose tie in a different picture with an untucked shirt. Like, yeah, the pinball picture's a little much with his baggy pants and his rolled-up T-shirt and his backward hat. That looks like he might be trying to be hanging out with his grandson.
Yeah, he might be trying a little bit too hard on that. But, he's got a bit of credence, I think. So I think we've closed the book on this chapter. Have you decided on our next chapter? Or, while you're doing that, I could do another dramatic reading of WAP.
Okay. So you asked me last week, do we want to go serious or frivolous on our next week's episode?
They're both fun.
That's not an answer.
Frivolous. Stupid.
Frivolous.
Yes.
Okay. I had one in mind.
Okay.
And then you had someone ask about Milli Vanilli.
Uh-huh.
So Milli Vanilli did make a few chart-topping sounds.
Okay.
And the other one I was thinking of, I think we could do Milli Vanilli if we want to be frivolous. There's a lot to dig into with people who didn't actually sing any of their own music.
You know what? We could just. Well, I guess we'll just start with the biggest hit. What do you think? Like, Girl, You Know It's True? I mean, that's their best song.
Girl, You Know It's True or Blame It on the Rain are kind of the ones that I was thinking of. Wait, did Girl, You Know It's True actually make number one?
I'm pretty sure it did. Let's confirm that. I think they had 3 number one hits. I think Girl, I'm Gonna Miss You also went number one.
Baby Don't Forget My Number was their first.
That was the first?
Then Blame It on the Rain. And then Girl, I'm Gonna Miss You.
Girl, You Know It's True didn't go number one?
I don't see it, but let's... Because that's the one that I always think of.
Because I could have sworn that was our first number one hit. Dun, 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 dun. Yep, hold on. Oh, it didn't. It went number 2. You're right. Well, fine. Baby, Don't Forget My Number. Fine. That's almost criminal. Girl, You Know It's True is such a great song. I know they didn't do it, but it's still a great song.
But it actually is a good song.
It's a fantastic song. All right, so I guess it really doesn't matter which one of these, huh? We could do, you know what?
I say we do Blame It on the Rain.
Blame It on the Rain. Okay. Blame It on the Rain it is. Mostly just a Milli Vanilli retrospective of...
Well, because they had 3 number one hits. I think that anything we discuss about anything that they did would be exactly the same discussion.
I think you're right. I think it's really just the Milli Vanilli episode of 2 pretty boys who were in the right place at the right time in the wrong era.
And couldn't sing.
And could not sing. But
all right.
Oh, I love this. I love this. I've got so much, and it's from the fatherland of Germany. Oh, it's a German song. I'm going to be so excited.
I'm going to be motherland.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I mean,
we've escaped another
we're both
dramatic
German heritage. I think this could be fun.
Yes, it could. Yes, it could. And I think the listeners have escaped another dramatic reading.
Mm-hmm. For now.
I don't see how I'm going to bring that up next week. I can't bring this up every week. I mean, I could, but I'd
rather not have it as an ongoing theme.
You know what? I think I'll just save that for when I'm trying to seduce my wife. Let's see if that works. Wait a minute.
You let me know how that goes for you.
Actually, if I'm singing the female part, I don't think that's going to work too good.
She'd just smack you and tell you to go walk the dog.
That's probably going to happen. Or though I could get her to sing it, but she's got that really thick Asian accent. That may not work either.
That could be really funny. She could do a dramatic reading of it.
Maybe I'll record that, and that'll be the opening. That probably won't happen, will it?
Probably not.
Okay. Andrew, thanks so much.
I don't think she'd be into it.
We have our homework set for next week.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Stay safe.